NASCAR is the most popular motorsport series across America, but its roots run deep as a regional sport in the South, especially in our home state of North Carolina. That history has heavily influenced the growth of motorsports in the U.S., which has produced a lot of Southern drivers and fans. But in recent years, a surprising trend has begun to level that playing field: the explosion in popularity of esports.
We're going to be able to grow a whole new generation of talent. You're going to have drivers that are going to be better. They're going to be smarter because they're going to be on the video game from 4 years old on, graduating into a simulator.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This week on The Broadside, my colleague Jared Walker brings us the story of a new generation of racing simulators and how they're changing the face of the sport at nearly every level. Hey, this is Anissa. I just wanted to take a moment to let you know that we can only do what we do with your support. That allows us to bring you original reporting every week about the stories that matter to you, about our home, this fascinating place that we live in. To support the show, go to this week's episode description and click the link, or go to WUNC.org and click on the donate link in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you so much, and now let's get back to the show. Jared, are you a racing fan?
No, I am not. But you've got gearheads in your family, right?
I do, yeah. My uncles and my brother are all really into cars. I actually have one uncle who built a Mustang in the garage, rebuilt it when he was 16. And ever since then, he's just been tinkering with one car or another. So I grew up around cars, played some racing games back in the day because anything my brother did, I had to try at least once.
Of course.
And it's fun.
Well, I don't have that connection. I own a car, and that's about the extent of my knowledge.
So what got you interested in a story about racing then?
There was a movie that came out last summer called Gran Turismo.
What is this?
It's a contest. The best Gran Turismo players in the world get a chance to compete in professional racing.
Dude, this is real.
It's based on a true story about a young video game player from England named Jan Mardenborough. And about a decade ago, he earned a professional racing contract after playing the game Gran Turismo.
I'm sorry. You really think you're going to take a kid who plays video games in their bedroom, you're going to strap him to a 200-mile-an-hour rocket? It'll tear him to pieces.
I love an underdog story, so I got really fascinated by this concept. There are only a handful of race car drivers out there who've made this kind of transition from the virtual world to the real world, but they do exist. So last summer, I hopped in my very sensible 2017 Subaru Outback, and I headed up to a NASCAR event in Richmond, Virginia to meet one of them.
Okay, paint me a picture of that.
It is loud. I mean, it's really loud. Richmond Raceway is this massive concrete oval surrounded by stands that can seat nearly 50,000 people. I was there for the qualifying round, which happens on the day before the race, so it was basically empty, except for a few dozen crews working on their cars on pit row. And that's where I met a 21-year-old driver competing in the NASCAR Truck Series.
So I'm Rajah Caruth, driver of the 24 Wendell Scott Foundation Silverado in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series for GMS Racing.
Rajah Caruth has a very untraditional background for a NASCAR driver. Most of his peers are white, and a lot of them come from racing families. They have these long lineages, and many of them have roots in the South. In contrast, Rajah is one of the only black men on pit row. For the past few years, he's been attending Winston-Salem State University, an HBCU here in North Carolina, but he grew up outside of the region. He's from Washington, D.C., and no one else in his family has ever raced cars.
So how'd Rajah get into this then?
As a kid, he was obsessed with the animated movie Cars.
Love that.
And that was his window into the sport.
So I grew up being a fan, watching races on TV, on YouTube, playing NASCAR video games. Went to my first race here at Richmond when I was 12. And I didn't start racing online until I was 15. And then got my first real life start when I was 17. So really late compared to everybody else I raced against.
Starting at 17 put him at a tremendous disadvantage. Most of his competitors began organized racing with go-karts when they were 6 or 7 years old.
That's a big gap. So how did he get his break?
It was via a hyper-realistic simulator game called iRacing.
I played like NASCAR 15, NASCAR Inside Line 2011 on the Wii and then PlayStation 3. And I saw iRacing at first was like just the next video game. Like it looked really cool and like I could just drive NASCAR on it.
But then something huge happened. When Rajah was a sophomore in high school, another iRacer named William Byron signed a NASCAR Cup Series contract to race real stock cars at the highest level of the sport.
And really that was a moment that I realized like, well, this is my chance. And I've always wanted to race and I knew like this is what I want my career to be in my life's work. So that was my one shot.
So he trained obsessively on the sim and became a dominant driver online. From there, he was identified by a NASCAR developmental program and got a chance to race real cars in some lower-level competitions, and that's where he started his climb.
There's no way that's as easy as it sounds.
No, it's super hard to do this. There are just some things that the sims can't prepare you for. The vibrations and noise in the vehicles at full tilt are incredible, and it's hot. On the day I visited Rajah in Richmond, the temperature on the track was about 140 degrees.
Wow.
Yeah, and I was uncomfortable all day long, and I was never inside of a stock car. And then there's a final hurdle, and this last one is obvious, but it's probably the biggest one. You can get hurt. You can die. And most people simply aren't mentally built to overcome that.
And that's a mental armor you need to take on the track with you, along with all that metal.
When did the reality of possible danger inside of a cockpit click in your mind?
It's always been there from the first time I did it. Because honestly, like when I first did it, I was scared, you know? This ain't easy, you know, and it wasn't a walk in the park.
Currently 18th in the championship standings, we just talked about that, and this weekend will mark his 20th career start and first full season of competition for Rajah Caruth, who goes quicker on lap 2. That'll move him up to 6th position, 23.1367 seconds.
How is it even possible to go from playing a video game in your house to racing professionally in the real world?
Yeah, I spoke with Steve Myers about this. He's an executive at iRacing, and he says motorsports are truly unique.
There isn't really a sport that I can think of that more closely represents the real action to the virtual one, where you could play a video game or a simulation and do all of the same actions that you would in the real world.
It's not like soccer or football, where esports and real sports are totally separate concepts. Like, there's no way that you could really be good at a video game like Madden and then translate that skill set into becoming a real NFL quarterback. But in a virtual world like iRacing,
you're using the same hand inputs, you're using the same foot movements, all of the same mechanical functions that you have to race in the real world, you're doing in the sim as well.
Steve says developers have spent decades improving the graphics and the code in these games, and they've gotten to a point where it's pretty close to the real-world physics of a race.
Okay, but even if the car in the game handles the way a real car would, a computer can't simulate how it feels to be hurtling along a racetrack at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, but to heighten the realism, gamers are investing in rigs that include physical things, like steering wheels, pedals, and gear shifts that help them replicate the feeling of driving a real car.
It's what you want to make of it, and that's what's great about this as a hobby. You know, I've seen people spend $100,000 on full motion rigs. You know, you feel like you're spinning in a real car because the whole machine moves. But the vast majority of our customers buy just a regular retail steering wheel and pedal set that you can get at Best Buy or Amazon or anywhere, and you just plug it into your PC, and those, you know, are anywhere from $200 to $300 typically, and you're literally racing within 30 minutes.
And while $300 may not be cheap, it's pretty economical for race car driving. It can cost $15,000 a year to race a car at the lowest level of the sport, and you're eventually going to get into a wreck.
You know, you wreck a race car and you bend a frame, you're not putting that car back on track again. So again, you're talking now at $10,000 or $15,000 at the most basic level to be able to get a car back on track again. And that's just not realistic for 99% of the people in the world.
This all sounds kind of revolutionary.
It is. I mean, it's broken down these huge barriers to entry for drivers. And Steve says it's part of a generational shift at nearly every level of NASCAR.
I can't see a time now going in the future where that's not going to be the case, because this really is, especially with the direction that the sports are going, this is the only way for people to train.
Coming up after the break, we find out how racing simulators are changing the action on the track. AI chatbots parse information. Have you ever considered their romantic potential? In a new 3-part series on love and AI from Embodied, we'll explore the intricacies of human-bot relationships, learn about the past, present, and future of sex robots, and meet people uploading conversations with their loved ones into software in hopes that it can help them grieve. New episodes drop each Friday in February, starting on the 9th. Subscribe and follow Embodied so you don't miss it.
North Carolina has more than 500 towns and cities, each with its own character, challenges, and stories to tell.
Change is difficult, and we're going through a tremendous amount of change.
I'm Colin Campbell, Capitol Bureau Chief at WUNC Radio. Join me as I travel the state of North Carolina to hear from people trying to make their communities better. The project is Main Street NC, and you can listen on the WUNC Politics Podcast.
Welcome back to The Broadside. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Now, Jared, we've talked about the way racing sims are beginning to change who drives cars in the real-life sport. But that's not the main audience for these games, is it?
No, it's kind of an unintended consequence. They make these games primarily for gamers. And it's a massive audience. They're everywhere. In fact, we didn't have to look very far to find one.
So should I go ahead and start racing?
Yeah, man, let's go racing. Al Wadarsky is one of the audio engineers here at North Carolina Public Radio.
Love Al. Had no idea he was a gamer.
Yeah, and he plays Gran Turismo. Al?
Yep.
How long have you been playing race car games and race simulators?
On and off, probably a good maybe 10 years, but I don't play them very, often.
What do you make of the fact that there are actually a handful of people on the planet who've made the jump from this or something like this game to high-level professional race car driving?
I can't imagine. Granted, I play on beginner level. I'm not like a pro at this, but I mean, it seems to me like this is really different than the real thing.
You're not ready to go 200 miles an hour?
No. I'm not ready to hit the wall. I'm not ready to bounce off other cars either.
Jared, I would assume that most people are like Al.
Yeah, you can also put me in that boat. And 99% of gamers have no intention of ever becoming professionals. I chatted with NASCAR's director of gaming and esports, a guy named Ray Smith. And he says that they see this stuff as an outreach tool. Casual gamers are potential NASCAR fans, and they think sims are a gateway into the sport.
It gives them a sense of what the driver's going through. So I always say, you jump on a sim and then you go to the race or you watch the race. All of a sudden you have a better understanding of what that driver's going through when they're going in turn one, or how difficult it is to get in a straight line after you get out of turn four. So it heightens the understanding and how you can engage the sport when you're able to access a simulator and then take in the sport as a fan.
NASCAR has been smart about capitalizing on this, and they were really early to embrace esports and have been in partnership with iRacing for over a decade now. And that partnership now extends to some pretty surprising places beyond just the video game.
In the past couple of years, they've been called on by several groups to build tracks or resurface tracks and get that design right before they go to it in real life.
So they're building virtual prototype tracks and then testing them with sim drivers.
Yeah, and the goal is to make sure that they're safe and entertaining before NASCAR spends millions of dollars building them. They recently did this for a road race that was held in one of the busiest cities in the world.
In less than 24 hours, history will be made in Chicago as NASCAR takes over some of the city's busiest streets.
CBS 2's Noel Brennan is live in Grant Park with excited fans.
iRacing went out in 2020 and scanned downtown Chicago to start developing this idea. Like, I don't know what goes into inventing a new race in a downtown area, but I couldn't imagine doing it without iRacing, without testing it.
So basically, these sims are no longer an afterthought, but an essential part of NASCAR's real-world operations.
Yes, and the culture of sim racing has also started to cross over into the way drivers compete in the real sport, sometimes in really dramatic ways.
Now, just 5 laps to go from Martinsville.
Here comes the contest. There was an incident in 2022 during the second-to-last NASCAR race of the season in Martinsville, Virginia. A driver named Ross Chastain was in 10th place and desperate to finish higher in the standings so he could make the cutoff for the playoffs.
Ross Chastain trying to get by the 9. Again, that points battle to determine who is the final championship 4 driver. Now Bell pulling away with those fresher tires.
And in the final turn of the final lap, he did something shocking. We should probably just watch the video. That's probably the easiest way to describe what's happening.
Yeah, let's do it.
Phoenix, take a look at what he did.
I have never seen anything like that before in my life.
Oh my God. Wow.
So instead of braking like everyone else in the turn, he slams into the side of the wall at full speed, destroys the side of his car, and blows past 5 other drivers to finish in 5th place.
Car's on fire. Complete side of the car is just gone. Like
smoke everywhere.
Smoke everywhere. Wow. Did he do that on purpose?
Yeah, it's a thing called the wall ride.
So the wall ride, in video game land, you put your car right up against the wall and just gas it. It's like getting on a roller coaster and controlling the speed. So you're really not turning it too much. You're really just hoping that the car matches the wall and it's a clean ride and you can just shoot around the corner at speeds that just don't really work. Because usually when you're at a Bristol or Martinsville or Richmond, you're breaking down to 50, 60 miles per hour to get around that corner. What Ross did was just gas it and go speeds that you're not supposed to go around corners at that speed. And that's why that move's outlawed now.
And look at the right side of the car. It's destroyed.
Always frowned upon in video games to do that and never thought it could be done in real life. And Ross Chastain pulled off one of the most iconic moves in motorsports.
It almost doesn't look real. He's going so fast. Look at this. It looks like a video game. It doesn't look real. He's going so fast.
We mentioned this earlier, but I'm curious to hear what Ray thinks about the increased attention that esports and sims are getting from things like the release of the movie Gran Turismo.
Yeah, he's excited. I mean, racing sims are not a secret in NASCAR or motorsports in general, but I don't think that the wider public is aware of the connection yet.
I love that movie came out. The conversation, has risen. Like, can you actually do that? Yes, you can actually do that. And that's a true story. And we have other true stories of people that aspire to be professional drivers starting that journey in the video game. And those skills actually make it all the way through to when they become professional drivers.
Jared, do you buy that? Can anyone, you or me or Al, do that? Or do you need to be born with some kind of special ability?
That is the million-dollar question, right? That's kind of what I wanted to find out when I started researching this. And I don't think I can definitively answer it myself. But I did ask Rajah Caruth. He's the young NASCAR driver who I hung out with in Richmond. There's probably nobody more qualified on the planet to answer that question than him. You were obviously born with some sort of preternatural ability. But
I can't say I totally agree.
Really? So this is my question. Can anyone go into a simulator and potentially, after training in a simulator, make the same jump? Is it possible?
I think, and I'm typically not the best with giving myself credit, and people tell me like I have a natural talent, and a lot of times I don't feel like that. I just feel like I try and I work harder than anybody else I race against, and I have to bust my butt to get to their level because I haven't been doing it a quarter as long as them. So with that being said, I feel like if you put in the time and you like apply yourself to learning the craft and learning the sport as well, then you can be as good as anybody.
This episode of The Broadside was produced by Jared Walker and edited by Charlie Shelton Ormond. Al Wodarski was our audio engineer and also showcased some incredible video game moves. Sean Rue provided additional audio support. A big thank you goes out to the folks at NASCAR and especially Matt Humphrey for his help during NASCAR race weekend in Richmond. Special thanks also to Eric Teal and WFAE in Charlotte for technical assistance. The Broadside is a production of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC. You can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm Anissa Khalifa. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.